And as Mark Twain said, I was dead for billions and billions of years before I was born, and never suffered the smallest inconvenience. So we were all dead through the time of the dinosaurs and the time of the trilobites and the time of early humans and so on. I mean, I do think that there is something quite frightening about the idea of eternity. The idea of just eternity going on and on and on and on and on. But again, eternity before you were born is just about as frightening as eternity after you're dead. And to the extent that eternity is frightening, I think I want to spend eternity under a general anesthetic. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Because when you're dead, of course, you are anesthetized. You don't know about it. I think the nearest I could come to that would be dying to preserve truth, something like scientific truth, something like that. I value what humanity has achieved, not just in science, but in literature and music and things as well. I do think there's something sad about the prospect that there will come. I do think there's something sad about a single entity anywhere in the universe will know, not a single entity anywhere in the universe will know anything about Shakespeare or Mozart, anything about Shakespeare and so or Mozart. If the circumstances arose whereby I was asked to die for the preservation of human culture, for, I think I could imagine preservation of human culture. I think I could imagine that including scientific culture. And I feel that our generation is extremely fortunate, and I feel that our generation is extremely fortunate. But I certainly would not have died in time to do that. I'd have been a conscientious objector in the First World War for sure. I certainly would not have died in the Second World War. I'd have been a conscientious objector in the First World War for sure.
Yeah, such a waste.
But in the Second World War, I think I probably would have.
We have time for a few questions from the audience that we've had by email. One is, during the past,
when Mendelian genetics, the genetics of Gregor Mendel, was grafted onto Darwinism. So for Darwin, he talked about survival of the fittest, he talked about the individual striving to survive and reproduce, and he was clear enough that only worked because there was some kind of heredity. And then Darwinism became a theory of changes in gene frequencies in population. Talk about evolutionary change. That was actually a big change. That genes, which are things you can count, they're digital, you can count them. That some of them become more frequent in the population, and others become less frequent in the population. So that was a major evolutionary step in the evolution of evolutionary theory. There were other major steps in the 1960s, 70s, where that was not so important, but that was it. Even in parallel to that, from the 1950s onwards, genetics became digital in the sense of the actual molecular structure of a gene. The Watson and Crick gene is just a long string of computer tape. And that has hugely changed the way we think about evolution. We can now actually compare any two animals you like, or any two plants and animals you like, and actually look at the digital sequence of code letters in their genes, count the number of differences between them, literally count them, and compute how closely related they are, and even calculate how long ago their shared ancestor lived. And that's a huge advance. A huge advance when molecular biology became digital. I changed my mind about something called the handicap principle, which is mostly arose in sexual selection. Darwin's other theory, sexual selection, the peacock's tail theory. The peacock has this gorgeous fan because the peahen likes the look of it. And there is a theory called the handicap theory, which suggests that the reason why not just peacock fans, but sexually selected characters are favored by females is that they are handicaps. Everybody knew they were handicaps, but the handicap principle idea was that the reason why a particular sexually selected character is favored is precisely that it's a handicap. And in a way, the female is saying to herself, this male has managed to survive in spite of carting around this ridiculous advertisement. So he must be a pretty good male.
Yes.
That's putting it very colloquially indeed, and I was extremely and vocally skeptical of that in the first edition of Selfish Gene, my first book. And I was converted to accept a more mathematical version of the handicap principle by a student of mine, Alan Graffan, who produced a most brilliant mathematical model to show that the handicap principle can actually be made to work. It originated from an Israeli zoologist called Zahavi, who didn't do it mathematically.
And you happily changed your mind?
Yes, and so in the second edition of The Selfish Gene, I explained Graffon's model of the handicap principle. And as Mark Twain said, I was dead for billions and billions of years before I was born, and never suffered the smallest inconvenience.